My name is Althea Lior. I am 35 years old, and I am a single mom. I have a daughter named Saphira. I thought I knew what hitting rock bottom felt like. I thought I had experienced the worst. But I was wrong. Rock bottom can have a basement, and in that basement, it smells strange, like sparkling cider mixed with betrayal. That smell, that feeling is what I felt that night. It all happened on New Year's Eve at my dad's house. Every year, we had a big party there. The TV would show the countdown to midnight, everyone would have noisemakers ready, and the air would feel a little tense. Family problems were always there, simmering quietly under the surface, but nobody really talked about them. That night, my stepmother, Zephira, had been making little mean comments all evening. She kept saying things about who really belonged at the main table and who didn't. She made it sound like some of us didn't even deserve to sit there. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I remember staring at the clock. I did this to avoid looking at people because I did not want to see the tension, the silent arguments, or the fake smiles. Then the door opened. My half-brother's little girl walked in. She was late and dressed up, excited for the New Year countdown, smiling from ear to ear. The moment she stepped in, Zephira's whole face changed. It was like she had switched into a different person, a mean, angry version of herself. Zephira got up and walked straight to Saphira's chair. This was the chair Saphira had used every year since she was very small. It was always her chair. And then Zephira said something I will never forget. "This chair is for my real granddaughter." Saphira froze. She didn't know what to do. She stayed in her chair for a moment, confused and scared. When she didn't move quickly enough, Zephira grabbed the chair and pulled it hard. Saphira fell to the floor. Her knee hit the hardwood. She cried immediately. Her party hat fell off, and a glass tipped over, spilling champagne across the white tablecloth. The worst part of all? Nobody moved. 20 people, including my dad, just sat there and watched like it was a show. It was silence that made my heart hurt more than Zephira's actions ever could. After that night, I took Saphira home. I cleaned her bruise and held her close until she fell asleep. But while I held her, all the old memories from my childhood started coming back. I realized that moment was not just about a chair. It was the last straw in a lifetime of unfairness. To understand why that small push changed everything, you need to know what had been happening for over 30 years. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? I was very young when my parents divorced. I remember visiting my dad less, and less until I stopped going entirely. He was busy running his company, and then he met Zephira. They got married when I was about 5. At first, I thought it was a good thing. Zephira smiled a lot, cooked nice meals, and my dad seemed happy. I wanted to like her. I wanted to think everything was okay. But 2 years later, my half-brother Kairos was born, and things started to change. At first, I didn't notice it much. Zephira began running the household, taking control of everything at home. My dad focused on the company, a small wooden toy company that my grandma Aurelia had started from scratch in Vermont. Grandma passed away when I was very little. She left the company and a trust fund for her grandchildren. People only mentioned it sometimes and always said it was for us when we grew up. Zephira said she was very good with money, so my dad let her manage the trust and the company's finances. I didn't think much about it back then. I trusted that they were doing the right thing. But as Kairos grew up, it became clear that he was getting everything. He got the best private schools, expensive summer camps, piano lessons, hockey equipment. When he went to college, my parents paid full tuition at a top university and even gave him a new car when he graduated. After that, they helped him start his own workshop inside the family company, calling it investing in the future. Meanwhile, my life was very different. I went to public school and took the bus. I worked at a coffee shop to pay for books and small things I needed. When I asked my dad about the trust for my college costs, he said, "It's handled. Just focus on studying." Zephira would always add with a soft, firm voice, "Don't make it harder for your dad. He is already doing so much for you." I swallowed my disappointment and stayed quiet. I thought I needed to be independent. When I graduated from college, I applied for a job in the family company, hoping to work somewhere I could make a difference. But all I got was a small entry-level admin job. Zephira told me, "You have to start from the bottom." Meanwhile, Kairos, fresh out of school, was put in charge of an entire product line. I met my ex-husband, got married, and had Saphira. But my marriage didn't last. I became a single mom, working double shifts to support Saphira. Even though life was hard, I kept bringing her to family gatherings. My dad was happy to see her, But Zephyra always had a way of making us feel like we didn't belong. Kairos is 28 now, and his daughter Larika is 6. Larika is the center of attention at every family event. She gets big birthday gifts, private art classes, and everyone calls her the little princess. Sapphira gets smaller gifts, and Zephyra often says, "Kids need to learn to appreciate what they have." I tried to ask my dad straight about Grandma's trust. He said it was still there and would be available when I needed it. But when I asked to see the papers to plan for Sapphira's future, Zephyra stepped in. "Let me look into it for you." "Don't worry your dad," she said. My dad nodded, and I let it go again. One day, I accidentally saw strange invoices on my dad's desk. Money was being transferred to companies I didn't recognize. I asked Zephyra about them, and she said it was normal business expansion costs. My dad told me not to worry about it. I stayed quiet, but I felt doubts starting to grow. Something didn't feel right. Then there was my cousin Kalen. He had worked in production management at the company for many years. He was good at his job, and everyone liked him. Suddenly, he left the company. Later, he told me Zephyra had slowly pushed him out, saying the position needed someone more trustworthy for the family. My dad said, "It's just internal business. Don't talk about it outside." After that, Kalen kept his distance from everyone. All these years, I told myself it was my imagination. Dad was still my dad. Zephyra was just protecting her family. Kairos was my brother. I focused on taking care of Sapphira. I didn't want to cause trouble. I worked hard, moved up in my job, saved every penny for Sapphira, and kept showing up to family gatherings, smiling and pretending everything was fine. But that New Year's Eve, when Zephyra pushed Sapphira out of her chair just to make room for Larika, everything I had kept inside for years came rushing out. I looked at my dad sitting there doing nothing, and saw Kairos smiling like it was no big deal. I realized I could not pretend anymore. That night, after Sapphira finally drifted off to sleep, I sat alone in the living room. The lights were off, and the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after too much noise. Outside, occasional fireworks popped in the sky as people celebrated the new year. My hands were shaking as I thought about everything. I remembered the way Zephyra had announced it in front of the whole table, the way she yanked Sapphira's chair, and the way everyone had just watched. My heart was heavy. Then I remembered the old USB drive Grandma Aurelia had given me years ago. She had handed it to me right before she got really sick and said quietly, "Keep this safe. It has copies of important papers about the company and the trust. You might need them someday." Back then, I didn't look at it much. It felt too heavy, like opening it would mean admitting something was wrong. But tonight felt different. I plugged the USB into my laptop. It opened slowly. Inside were old files from 15 to 20 years ago. There were scanned documents, bank statements, printed emails, and notes from meetings with the estate lawyer. At first, it seemed normal business stuff, supplier invoices, payroll records. But then I noticed things that didn't add up. Money was being transferred to accounts I didn't know. Some companies seemed to exist only on paper. The trust money was shrinking slowly but steadily. Emails showed Dad and Zephyra discussing, optimizing the funds for family needs. Nothing screamed fraud, but the pattern was there. The money that was meant for me and my future kids was slowly being taken away over the years. I spent hours reading every document carefully, taking notes on my phone, and screenshotting important pages. By the time the sky started turning gray in the morning, I knew this wasn't my imagination. I had to do something. I didn't want to cause a big fight, not yet. I opened my email and found the contact for Mr. Harland, the lawyer who had handled Grandma's estate. His firm still existed. I had seen his name on old letters from years ago. I wrote a calm and professional email. I explained that I had found old documents and had questions about how the trust had been managed. I attached 5 key files, the ones that showed the most questionable transfers and changes. I read the email 3 times, then hit send at 3:17 a.m. New Year's Day was quiet in our neighborhood. Most people were still asleep. My phone stayed silent through breakfast. Around 10 a.m., I saw my dad's car pull up outside. He and Zephyra came to the door together. Dad looked tired. Zephyra looked tense. "Althea," Dad said when I opened the door, "we need to talk about the email you sent to Harland." Zephyra didn't waste time. "Those are private documents. You shouldn't have gone through them," she said. Kairos showed up 20 minutes later, knocking hard. "Sis, what's going on?" he asked. Dad said, "You sent something to the lawyer?" Apparently, Mr. Harland had called Dad first thing in the morning to let him know about the documents. I stayed calm. I had waited a long time to understand the truth. And now, for the first time in over 30 years, I was ready to face it. Dad tried to stay calm. He told me it was probably just a misunderstanding. The trust has always been managed properly, he said. But I could see the worry in his eyes, even when he tried to hide it. Zephyra kept checking her phone again and again. The bank had called earlier, asking about some old transfers. One of our bigger suppliers wanted to know about payment schedules. Kairos was frustrated. "Why do this now?" he asked, throwing his hands in the air. The calls kept coming all day long. The accountant wanted copies of old records. A partner at the company wanted to know if there were any problems with the trust funding. Even the lawyer's office called to say they had received some papers and would need time to review them carefully. Dad sat on the couch at one point, holding his head in his hands. Zephyra made calls in the kitchen, her voice low but sharp, like she was trying to control everything. I made coffee and stayed quiet. I just watched everything unfold. Part of me felt guilty. These were my family, people I had known my whole life. But another part of me felt something I had never felt before. I felt a sense of power, a strange but exciting feeling. I finally had information that they didn't control, something that was mine. It was like I had a secret key to a locked door. They tried for hours to fix the situation. Dad appealed to family loyalty. "We're all on the same side here," he said quietly. Zephyra tried to make me feel guilty. "Think of everything we've done for you and Sapphira," she said, as if reminding me of favors and care. Kairos got angry. "You're going to destroy everything over some old papers," he shouted. By the evening they left. They promised to get everything straightened out quickly, but their faces told a different story. They were not happy. The new year had barely started, and already everything felt different. I sat alone that night, listening to distant celebrations and fireworks. I knew I had crossed a line there was no going back from. Whatever came next, I had started it. And for the first time in years, I wasn't scared. It felt like breathing freely after being trapped underwater for a long time. The weeks after New Year felt like walking through thick fog. The pressure came in waves from my family. Dad called almost every day. His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain in it. "Have you thought more about dropping this whole thing?" he asked. Zephyra sent emails with subject lines like, "Let's talk for Sapphira's sake." I kept my responses short or didn't answer at all. I had to think carefully. Then the official letter arrived. It was a thick envelope with a law firm's return address. Inside were papers saying I had committed defamation, which meant I had supposedly lied about the trust management. They accused me of interfering with family business operations. The papers claimed that I had done something wrong and were seeking damages that could take everything I had, my savings, my home, even future earnings. The lawyer's name was new to me, but I noticed he specialized in family disputes and protecting reputations. Zephyra called the same day the papers were delivered. Her tone was different now. It was less pleading and more businesslike. "Althea," she said, "this doesn't have to go to court. We can end it quickly. Sign the family resolution agreement I sent. Withdraw your inquiry with Heron, and we'll consider the matter closed. No one wants this dragged out." The agreement was attached again. It required me to sign a statement saying I had been mistaken in my concerns, that all trust management had been proper, and that I would never raise the issue again. In return, they would drop the lawsuit and maintain family harmony. I read the papers twice, feeling the walls closing in around me. Dad came over 2 days later without Zephyra. He sat in my living room, hands clasped, looking worn and tired. "You're breaking apart what I've spent my life building," he said quietly. "The company, the family name, all for what?" I asked why they were fighting so hard to stop a simple review if everything was above board. He sighed. "It's complicated business stuff. Zephyra handles it better than I do. We've done what's best for everyone, including you and Sapphira." But he couldn't look me in the eye when he said it. Kairos took the fight public. His first post was a photo of him and Larika in the workshop. Her tiny hands were on a half-finished wooden truck. The caption read something about teaching the next generation what hard work really means. "Some people forget family comes first," he added. Comments rolled in fast from local folks who had known our family for years. "Can't believe someone would do this to Theron and Zephyra," one wrote. "Prayers for the family." "Stay strong," said another. "Greedy people always show their true colors," wrote someone else. Eventually, the messages piled up in my notifications. Some people I didn't even know had heard about the trouble. "Hope you reconsider for your dad's sake," they wrote. A couple of cousins stopped responding to my texts. One sent a private message saying, "This is hurting everyone. Think about Larika." Even at Sapphira's school pickup, I noticed whispers from other parents. One mentioned hearing about the family legal stuff with a sympathetic but distant smile. The isolation settled in deep. Groceries felt awkward, running into people who suddenly had somewhere else to look. Zephyra sent another email with an updated agreement. This one had a deadline. Sign by Friday or they would proceed fully with the lawsuit. Dad tried one last in-person visit. He brought photos, old ones of me as a kid with him at the workshop, Kairos as a baby, even one with Grandma Aurelia. "Remember how close we were," he said. "Don't throw that away over misunderstandings." When I asked again about the specific transfers I had seen, he changed the subject. Kairos's posts kept coming. One had Larika holding a sign she had colored herself. "I love Grandpa and Grandma." Comments poured in. "That poor little girl. Protect your family," people wrote. The online judgment felt endless. Some nights I lay awake, phone face down to stop the notifications, wondering if they were right. Was I the one causing all this pain? Would backing down be easier for Zephyra? But then I thought about the patterns in those documents. The way they had fought so fast and so hard. They weren't scared of the truth coming out, because it was clean. They were scared because it wasn't. The pressure built every day, legal, emotional, social. I felt cut off from the world I'd grown up in. More alone than I had ever been. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't going to sign. I wasn't going to stop, even if it meant standing completely by myself. The turnaround didn't happen all at once. It started quietly, about 3 weeks after the lawsuit hit. I was checking my email one evening when a message popped up from a name I hadn't seen in years. Cousin Kaylin. "Althea, I heard through the grapevine about the legal stuff with the company. If you're digging into how Zephyra handles things, I might have something that could help," the email said. My heart skipped. We arranged to meet at a small diner halfway between our towns, somewhere neutral. Kaylin showed up with a thick folder under his arm. He looked older, but still had the same direct way of talking. After small talk about our kids, he got to the point. "When Zephyra pushed you out years ago, it wasn't just about restructuring. She rewrote supplier contracts to favor companies that quietly gave money back through inflated invoices," he said. He slid the folder across the table. It was full of printed emails from back then, contract copies, and payment records showing overcharges for raw wood materials. 3 suppliers had been affected the most. Kaylin had kept everything because he had always suspected more was going on. "I reached out to 2 of them last week. They're still angry. They'll share their records if it comes to that," he said. The documents matched patterns I had glimpsed in Grandma's files. Having Kaylin on my side felt like the first real support I had in months. Mr. Harland called shortly after he completed a thorough review of the trust against the documents Kaylin and I had provided. "The discrepancies are substantial," he said. "Withdrawals that violated the rules. There was even a clause Grandma Aurelia had insisted on. If mismanagement or fraud was verified, control would automatically transfer to the primary beneficiary. That beneficiary was me, either when I reached age or when a trigger happened." He was preparing to file for enforcement. News traveled through official channels first. The bank placed holds on certain accounts pending clarification. A major wood supplier sent a formal letter requesting verification of past payments before extending new credit. Dad's lawyer fired off demands that I cease harassment, but the tide was turning. Then the IRS entered the picture, not from a direct tip from me. Harlan's firm had an obligation to report suspicious patterns during the trust review. An agent requested company tax records for the past 7 years, looking at business deductions, expense categorizations, and related party transactions. Theron and Zephyra brought in a tax specialist immediately. Kairos went quiet online. Some family members who had distanced themselves started reaching out cautiously, asking what was really happening. Over the following months, the evidence accumulated steadily. Kaylin's suppliers provided sworn statements about overpricing and redirected funds. Harlan's forensic accountant traced more transfers that breached trust restrictions. The protective clause was formally invoked in court filings. Temporary oversight of trust assets shifted pending a full hearing. Dad tried another meeting, this time with Zephyra present. They offered settlement terms: drop everything, sign a non-disclosure, small payout. But the momentum was no longer theirs. Zephyra attempted to reframe transactions as legitimate business strategy, but the paper trail didn't support it. Suppliers' records showed consistent overcharges benefiting linked entities. IRS interviews with former employees revealed questionable deductions. One by one, the explanations fell apart. I watched from a distance as their defenses weakened. Kaylin became a steady ally, helping organize documents. Harland kept things professional, updating me on each development. Even a couple of longtime company workers contacted me privately, saying they had always wondered about certain decisions, but stayed quiet for their jobs. The picture became clearer with every new piece, not a sudden explosion, but a steady uncovering. Theron and Zephyra fought every step of the way. Motions, delays, counterclaims. But each effort exposed more. I began sleeping better. The isolation eased as facts replaced rumors. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Calm, clarity, and a strange kind of confidence. I wasn't alone anymore. I had Kaylin, Harland, and even a few quiet supporters at the company. Slowly, life started feeling less like walking through fog, and more like seeing the sun peek through clouds. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt things starting to get better. Not because anyone got angry or shouted, but because I kept trying and never gave up. The truth that had been hidden for many years finally came out, and it was on my side. After watching quietly from the sidelines for so long, I could finally see that things were changing. Slowly but surely I could see the path ahead. It was like the fog was lifting, and I could finally see the sunlight. The court meeting happened in the county courthouse in Vermont. The building was simple, with bright, buzzing lights and wooden benches that creaked whenever someone sat down. The case was about both money problems and small legal issues. It had to do with broken rules in the family trust and problems with taxes that had been ignored for years. Not many people came. There were a few reporters from the local newspaper, some company workers on break, and the lawyers and prosecutors. On one side were my dad and Zephyra's team, and on the other side was mine. The judge was clear and serious. There was no drama, no shouting, nothing scary. Harland, our lawyer, explained everything carefully and slowly. He showed how money from the trust had been taken the wrong way, how taxes had not been done right, and how it happened many times over the years. Statements from suppliers were read out loud. An IRS agent explained all the tax mistakes. Income that wasn't reported, expenses that were fake, and penalties that were added. Dad sat quietly and stared straight ahead. Zephyra took notes with a serious face. Their lawyer said maybe it was just mistakes in complicated family business accounting, but the evidence was too strong. After 3 long days, the prosecutors offered a deal, so there wouldn't have to be a full trial. Theron and Zephyra agreed to it. Theron got probation for 3 years. That meant he wouldn't go to jail but had to follow strict rules. He also had to pay a lot of money and return the money taken from the trust. Zephyra lost her claim to anything left in Grandma's will and had to pay back the money she had wrongly received, with extra interest. The company had to sell some things to pay back taxes and fines. Kairos, who had promised to pay some of his parents' business loans, couldn't keep up and had to go to court to protect himself from bankruptcy. I got full legal control of the rest of the company and the fixed trust. The judge signed the papers that afternoon. The courtroom emptied quietly. Nobody from their side said a word to me. Dad looked at me once when he left but didn't speak. Zephyra packed her things and walked out with her lawyer. Kairos didn't come to the last session. I left the courthouse alone. Outside, the Vermont air was cold, and snowflakes were starting to fall. I blocked their phone numbers, deleted old emails, and removed myself from family group chats. When holiday cards came for Zephyra, I didn't open them. I didn't go to the usual family gatherings. I said no to distant relatives who tried to reach out. I cut all contact completely. I wasn't angry. I did it for clarity, for safety, and most of all, for Zephyra. Changing the company took time. Some employees decided to leave because they didn't feel comfortable with the new changes. Others stayed because now everything made sense. I worked slowly to make things right. I cleaned up contracts, paid suppliers fairly, and focused on making good quality things instead of rushing to grow fast. Zephyra got used to this new calm life. She stopped asking about Grandpa and Grandma. Over time, we built new traditions, small celebrations, little trips, just the two of us. I signed her up for activities she loved without worrying about comparisons to other kids. The legal problems ended quietly. The local newspaper wrote a short story about the plea deal and money changes. Nothing more. Theron and Zephyra sold the big house and moved to a smaller place outside town. Kairos started over in a small apartment with a new, simple job. I learned these things from public records or from people I knew, but I didn't look for updates. I didn't need them. The boundary I set was strict. No exceptions. No second chances. It wasn't cruelty. It was necessary to keep peace. For me. For Zephyra. Some people asked if I regretted cutting ties completely, if it was too harsh. I didn't. Family doesn't always mean safety. Blood doesn't give you the right to hurt others. Family is about respect and protection. When respect is gone for decades and it puts your child at risk, you protect what's yours. I chose us every day. The company became more than Grandma's legacy. It became mine, built on honesty, fair work, and doing what was right. Safira grew confident, kind, and unafraid to speak up. She learned what healthy boundaries are and what self-respect means. That was the real inheritance I gave her. Not hidden money or a family name, but the freedom to choose who stays in her life. As another year ended, I stood in the workshop late at night. The lights were low, and the smell of fresh cut wood filled the room. Everything felt solid, earned, and mine. Family isn't where you sacrifice your child to stay. Family is where you protect them no matter what. I chose strong boundaries, and it was the best decision I ever made. 1 year later, New Year's Eve came again. My life looked nothing like it used to. The company was not just surviving, it was growing in ways I never expected. With clean books and honest practices, we got new contracts with bigger stores that valued handmade quality. Orders grew steadily. I brought in new designs with sustainable wood. The workshop was full of energy. Employees who stayed said they finally felt valued. No more rushed decisions or shortcuts. Profit sharing became real, and people came motivated. I ran the company my way, steady, fair, and long-term. Safira thrived in the calm life we made. She went to a good public school with small classes, made friends, joined art club and soccer. Evenings were spent cooking together, reading, or going for weekend hikes in the Vermont woods. No more tense holiday visits. No more walking on eggshells. We built our own traditions, small celebrations with people we chose. I heard nothing from my old family. No birthday calls, no cards, no attempts to reach out. Theron and Zephyra stayed in their smaller place. Cairo's rebuilt slowly, and I learned about it only from neutral sources. Larica grew up without us in her daily life. I didn't check. I didn't wonder. The boundary held firm. Absolute. It wasn't me being mean. It was for peace. For Safira's future. People asked if I regretted it, if cutting off family was too much. I didn't. Blood doesn't earn a place if it costs your well-being. Family is about respect, safety, and love. I chose us every day. The company became more than Grandma's name. It became ours, built on honesty and fairness. Safira grew confident and kind. She learned what boundaries are and how to protect herself. That was the real inheritance I gave her, not money hidden in shadows, but the freedom to choose who stays in life. As another year ended, I stood in the workshop late at night. The smell of fresh cut wood was all around me. Everything felt solid and mine. Family isn't the place where you sacrifice your child to stay. Family is where you protect them no matter what. I chose strong boundaries, and it was the best choice I ever made.